About this time, I received a frantic letter from the mother of my buddy Richard Finn, who was drafted and sent to Vietnam and put into the Americal Division in the infantry up north around Chulia. Apparently, she received a telegram saying he was wounded but heard nothing more. She wanted me to go look for him and let me know what happened and if he was still alive. I showed the letter to my company commander, and he gave me 5 days to go look for him and wrote me orders to do so. I was amazed that he gave me this time. So off I went hitchhiking on helicopters all the way up to Chu Lai. It was about a 360-mile trip one way. With flight wings on my chest and hat, it was easy to hitch rides. There was an unwritten rule that combat air crew members had priority on flights going anywhere. I had my .45 camera and a small pack only. I caught a ride out of Phu Loi on an Air Force C-130. I sat on the floor holding a strap going across from side to side. The C-130 blasted off with the help of small jet engines. We were on our way with only a few bullet holes coming up through the floor. It was fairly empty, so no real problems. The NVAVC could just not help themselves from shooting at such a big, slow-flying target. We made it to Long Bin, where I caught a Huey heading on a long flight to Cam Ranh Bay. Cam Ranh was so beautiful I could not believe it. Pure sugar sand on a long beach. It was an in-country R&R center. I spent a night and day there eating a hamburger and drinking a soda and hanging around on the beach. How wonderful that was. It really broadened my vision of Vietnam. The South China Sea was spectacular. Back on my trip north to Chu Lai on 2 more Huey flights. The flight crews always asked how things were in my area of operation. I told them, and I guess it was about the same everywhere once one got away from the big air bases. I finally reached Chu Lai and was told that I should look for my friend at the 91st Field Evacuation Hospital, that they should have the names of the wounded there. I said thanks and asked at the hospital if they had a wounded fellow there named Richard Finn, and they said yes, he was in ward so-and-so and bunk number whatever. So I went to the place and found Richard Finn. He had one leg amputated and was waiting to go to somewhere else. This Richard Finn was black and my friend was white. Wrong guy. I talked to him and wished him the best of luck. I asked around the hospital if anyone knew my buddy. No one knew him or about him. The guys told me that if he wasn't there, either he was dead or wounded bad enough to be shipped to Japan to a hospital there. I know records are rather loose in Vietnam, and even if Finn was wounded next to someone, that someone may not have known him or his name. It's terrible to say, but I had guys wounded and killed right next to me whom I never knew, nor did I know their names. In a gunfight, one just keeps on shooting as best one can. Unless a friend is wounded or killed, one is unaware of who is who on the casualty list. It's heart-rending to see so much death and tearing apart of bodies on both sides, but there is always the thought that is way back in one's mind that seems to be a little voice that says, "I'm glad it isn't me laying there." It sounds unfeeling and selfish, but it is not. It seems to be an automatic thought that pops up in a survivor's mind. I would say that when it's a very close friend that gets killed is the only time that little voice didn't speak. I know that was the case with me. I have talked to other guys about these kind of feelings, and they verified that they thought like I did as far as the little voice in their head. I learned a lot on my trip in Hueys flying above the South China Sea along the Vietnam coast. It was the most beautiful land that I had ever seen, and it was breathtakingly soul-touching. How could a cruel war be taking place in such a peaceful-looking place? I was looking at heaven as far as I was concerned. The crystal blue of the sea and the many dazzling colors of green on the valleys and mountains. The beaches of pure white and water falls along the rivers. Most people do not get the opportunity to see what I'm seeing. How lucky I am. I felt a great comfort come over me just seeing how beautiful everything could be. It changed the way I thought. Everything is beautiful, there are just some rough times to get over. A dreamy beautiful and a crazy reality. I finally arrived at Fuloy and continued my crew chief job as usual. I had a good crew chief take over my helicopter while I was gone, and there were no problems. I wrote Mickey's mom, his name was Mickey Finn to many, and told her that I was not sure what happened to him as I could not find him. The next mail call, I received a letter from her that Mickey was in Japan recovering from his wounds and thanked me for my effort to look for him. As I found out later, Mickey was in Vietnam about 2 months as an infantry fellow when on a patrol he was walking point with another fellow when the other fellow stepped on a mine. The fellow that stepped on the mine had his legs blown off and died. Mickey had a lot of shrapnel blown into his intestines and was in very bad shape and was in a hospital in Japan for a whole year. But he survived after being hooked on morphine all that time. The hospitals let guys hooked on morphine out cold turkey. Many became heroin addicts because of that. That's why partly the bad reputations abounded about Vietnam veterans being drug addicts. It was the Army and veterans hospitals that were the cause of much of it. No mercy for wounded veterans back then.